Thank you. Good morning, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to panel session 2 at the Naice conference for 2019. Yesterday, we had our first panel session, and we'll continue to look at AI and the role it's playing in our industry. Yesterday, we're taking on a journey on what AI is doing, not just in our industry, but in life generally, and what we are doing with AI in Nigeria today with companies like Shell. Okay, so just to welcome you again, today we're looking at transforming big data and technology to business values, challenges, and strategic options. At the opening ceremony on Monday, we're giving the tip of the iceberg from one of our speakers for this discussions for this session. Well, quickly before we get into all of that, again, we say a warm welcome to International President for 2019, Mr. Sami Al-Nim. Thank you for joining us as always. We welcome our Council Chair, BOT Chair, and our ARD. All of our leaders, we welcome you. We welcome our distinguished speakers. To get us started, before that, please, can we just turn our phones to silence and vibrations at this time? We'll appreciate it. Now, the headset, there's no interpretation service since we're all speaking English, but the headset is just to improve the audio quality, your listening pleasure, if you like. That's what the headset is meant for, especially when someone is up here speaking and their projection is not as loud as you're hearing it. Don't strain your ears, just put the headset on and it will help you to hear them better. That's the essence of the headset. Okay, so quickly to formally welcome us, we're starting with the event. I want to welcome our council chairman and the chief operating officer for Synergy. Please welcome Mr. Debo Fagbami as he takes his opening address at this panel session 2.
Yeah, Mr. President, Sami, the African Regional Director, Professor Iledari, Mr. Andy Olotu, the BOT Chairman, and all our trustees from SP Nigeria Council, council members, our distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 3. That's the final day of Naice 2019. And welcome more specifically to panel session 2. It's our signature panel session event, which a lot of people tend to look at or to look forward to. On the back of 2 very interesting panel discussions yesterday, that's the Women Development Program as well as the panel session 1, where operational issues pertaining to the conference theme of big data and AI were extensively trashed out. This morning, we're having panelists that are going to be talking on more strategic issues and challenges that are facing the issue of big data as well as artificial intelligence. So today, we have a power-packed panel session of discussions that will be thoroughly looking at these strategic options, and they will be ably moderated by Wale Famureva from CNBC Africa. And definitely it promises to be a very, very interesting set of presentations. So I urge you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy it. We hope to round up sometime before lunch so that we can have an exhibition tour, with our panelists, so that they can get to connect with our exhibitors, and then thereafter we'll proceed for a sumptuous meal at lunch. So sit back and enjoy the rest of the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Council Chairman Debo Fagbami. He's also the Chief Operating Officer for Synergy. Thank you. Another reminder that we should please take care of our personal belongings whilst we're in the conference. Switching gears now, we want to show appreciation to our sponsors as always, and this time we're being sponsored by a company who showed us what they are already doing with artificial intelligence. For instance, wearing some special kind of goggles that transmits information live to OEM and guides the engineer how he operates on that equipment on the spot. They are leaders in the oil and gas industry here in Nigeria and continue to demonstrate that with what we saw yesterday. Can we please put our hands together appreciating Shell? Shell is SPDC is our sponsors for today. We thank you immensely. I'd like to at this time now welcome SPDC's General Manager, PTD Development, Goke Akirin Made, as he takes the sponsor's remarks. Let's please welcome him.
The President, SP International, the Chair, SP Nigeria Council, CEOs, delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Over the years, shell companies in Nigeria have remained a key player in the Nigerian Council of SPE. Apart from the scores of our engineers who play major roles in the activities of the society, at a corporate level, our companies have identified with SPE in different shades and forms. We are therefore delighted to have the opportunity to be part of the 2019 annual conference and exhibition. As speakers, exhibitor, and particularly sponsors of many elements of the conference, including today's panel session sponsored by our deepwater business, Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company, SNEPCO. The Managing Director of SNEPCO, Bayo Ojulari, was here yesterday to give the keynote for the first panel session. And he was humble enough not to tell you that SNEPCO has been Nigeria's cash cow for the past 14 years and still counting. A feat that has helped keep our national economy running using the Bonga FPSO, which is the first deepwater experience in Nigeria's oil and gas industry. That pioneering adventure revolutionized oil exploration and production in deepwater Nigeria. The rest, as they say, is history. But at the heart of the success of the Bonga story is massive deployment of technology, creation of volumes of data, and application of artificial intelligence in the analysis of the data. Apart from leading in the deepwater space in Nigeria, Shell has also never lost sight of the future, even in managing today's business. Data acquisition and generation have experienced exponential growth over the past 10 years. And it may interest you to note that 90% of the total data that have been acquired to date were actually acquired in the past 2 to 3 years. Whilst data generation is growing exponentially, we are not fully mining the available data. And as such, we are not realizing the full potential. Beyond data acquisition and generation, it is crucial that all aspects of the data value chain, including data storage, data processing, data retrieval, and application, grow at the same pace. Hence the global drive in digitalization, in data analytics, and also artificial intelligence. The enabling technology has become faster and cheaper. In fact, in the past 10 years, when you look at the cost of bandwidth, it's dropped by a factor of 40. The cost of processing power as well has dropped by a factor of 50. And the cost per MB of cloud infrastructure by a factor of 20. No doubt that the oil and gas industry has big data, and more is being acquired daily. The enabling technology is also advancing at a very, very fast pace. The value therefore lies in how we are effectively able to bring the two together. That's essentially big data and also the technology. And the key questions that we must address today include where those opportunities actually lie. What are the challenges? And lastly, how do we overcome those challenges so that we can realize the full potential? The topic of today's session, which is transforming big data and technology to business value, challenges and strategic options, is therefore very, very appropriate and very apt. Permit me to indulge you for a moment on where we are in Shell on the digitalization journey. Digital technologies are emerging as a vital tool to help us generate the high returns we need as a business to become a world-class investment case. They are transforming how we work by reducing costs and improving the productivity and reliability of our activities. Today, our digital activities have the potential to generate billions of dollars in value over the coming years. We can do more across all our businesses, whether in finding oil and gas, designing and drilling wells, serving customers, or buying tools, goods, and services. In short, digital technologies are making Shell a more profitable business. We are using the vast amount of data that we produce to make better decisions and improve our costs and our operations. Today, we have around 200 petabytes of data, which has been growing at around 20% year on year. We are increasingly moving that data to the cloud, giving us close to limitless processing capacity. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing our analysis of that data so that we can develop new oil and gas fields faster and more cheaply. For example, we have developed machine learning models to search more effectively for common geological features, such as faults. The software can sort through large volumes of seismic data in hours. I joined the oil and gas industry almost 3 decades or so ago as a geologist. And I still remember when I joined, we used to do seismic interpretation manually, big paper, with pencil on one hand and eraser on the other. In fact, the volume of data we had was so much that we were unable to even interpret every line. We used to skip lines to interpret. So all in all, we used to interpret, I would say, 10% of the available data. But between then and now, with artificial intelligence, you can do all of that in hours. In those days, to fully interpret an oil field, depending on the number of levels you want to interpret, could take you months. But with machine learning, we are doing this now in hours. It is indeed a journey, and in Shell, we remain determined to make the best of emerging technologies. With that said, I would like to thank SPE for allowing us to partner with them in sponsoring today's panel session. And personally, I look forward to the great presentations that will be made by the panelists, and also looking forward to the interesting discussions that will follow. I would like to wish all of us a very, very interesting session this morning. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you very much, Goke. Akirimade Goke is the General Manager, Shell Development Department. Okay, so continuing now, we go over to the keynote address. Since what we did yesterday is what we're doing today, we're going to take the lead presentation. Thereafter, I would welcome the panel members. Now, this allows the panel members to see the presentation a bit better. Sometimes, some of them, when they see, those who were at the WDP, if you recall, some of our panel members had to do a slight turn to see the big screen. We'll have monitors here for them to see. Let that be when we show a few slides during their panel discussion, then they can look at that. We continue now to the presentation. Our lead speaker is the Chairman and Managing Director of Chevron Nigeria Limited, Mr. Jeffrey Ewing, who is unable to join us today. You recall he was with us at the opening ceremony. But not to worry, we'll have a very reputable representation for Mr. Ewing. And this gentleman has well over 3 decades of experience in the oil and gas industry. A petroleum engineer himself, oversees the company's assets in the deep water. He is currently Chevron's director, deepwater assets and production sharing contracts for Chevron Nigeria and Mid-Africa Business Unit. Please welcome with me Mr. Richard Kennedy.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you for that very kind introduction and the warm welcome. Before I proceed with my remarks, please allow me to stand on previously expressed protocols. On behalf of the Chairman and Managing Director of Chevron Nigeria Limited and all of our outstanding employees, it is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to share with you a high-level overview of Chevron's perspective and approach for overcoming the challenges of transforming big data and digital technology to business value. I will provide an overview of our digital imperatives and our focus on developing data science fluency throughout the organization. I will conclude by briefly sharing examples where Chevron Nigeria is realizing business value from big data. The advancement and convergence of digital technology has made it easier, cheaper, and faster to collect data, connect it, analyze it, and then act upon it. Big data is here. We can drown in big data, or we can embrace big data and related digital technologies to transform how we do our work to enable improved business performance. Acceptance of big data and the digital revolution is not optional. Embracing digital is critical to staying competitive. It starts with a vision. If we are to accelerate our transition to a digitally enabled company with a digitally fluent workforce, we must make this a strategic imperative. Chevron's CEO, Mr. Mike Wirth, provided us this vision in 2018. Digital innovation and acceleration is a strategic imperative for Chevron. The pace of change associated with the digital revolution introduces a number of challenges to any organization. Our legacy IT systems have naturally and understandably evolved into an extremely complex IT environment, which includes disparate data repositories. This complex system prevents us from continuing to cost-efficiently maintain, scale, and adapt in response to rapid change. In addition, organizational barriers need to be overcome to enable a mindset that empowers and rewards creativity and innovation. Accelerating digital fluency across the organization is key. To address the many barriers and challenges associated with making a rapid transition to a digitally enabled company, Chevron identified 6 foundational digital imperatives which will underpin our internal digital revolution and position us to fully realize the benefit and value of big data and digital technology. Imperative number 1, treat data as a vital asset to be effectively managed and appropriately shared to maximize value. Billions of dollars of actionable insights are trapped within disparate structured and unstructured data repositories. Efforts to consolidate into a single trusted source with no duplication enable data transparency and quality. which is key to enabling analytics that drive better decisions, innovation, and results. Imperative number 2, application programming interfaces, or APIs, enable seamless connection of data and functionality across the enterprise. They are the communication mechanisms for digital platforms and solutions, helping to eliminate existing data silos and giving faster access to new tools and capabilities. Imperative number 3, changes in cyber threats, cloud computing, mobile devices, the industrial Internet of Things, and other digital technologies necessitate designing security into every component of our IT ecosystem in order to protect employees and their privacy, to protect the environment, and to protect intellectual property. Imperative number 4, digital platforms. Digital platforms empower Chevron to easily and rapidly harness the benefits of technologies at scale. They are comprised of layers that can be holistically managed to deliver products faster, with increased scalability, reduced support coordination, and greater data transparency. Functional centers of excellence within Chevron are developing and deploying a number of next-generation enterprise digital platforms, which will redefine, for example, integrated subsurface modeling workflows. We will redefine how we manage our supply chain and how we manage the inspection and maintenance of oil field facilities and equipment. Imperative number 5, cloud computing enables companies to unlock new ways to achieve business imperatives faster than ever before. Chevron has established a strategic partnership with Microsoft to focus and accelerate our ability to fully capitalize on the scalability, agility, efficiency, and turnkey innovation cloud technologies can deliver. Teams in Chevron selecting and designing new digital solutions are thinking Azure first and are encouraged to explore what services are already available. And lastly, imperative number 6, an agile mindset enables teams to iteratively solve complex problems, prioritizing functionality and breaking deliverables into manageable increments for focused effort. The agile mindset will drive a cultural shift that values creativity and innovation and allows us to learn quickly, adjust, and deliver results faster to keep pace with business and technological advancements. Effectively implementing these 6 digital imperatives will break down barriers to digital innovation and value. Delivering on these 6 imperatives will enable us to continue to cost efficiently and rapidly scale our digital solutions in response to the growth of big data. They will guide behaviors to reduce the complexity, the total cost, and time to realize value from big data. In parallel with the implementation of the foundational digital imperatives, Chevron is accelerating digital fluency development of our workforce to enable innovation at the edge. Everyone is becoming a digital citizen as we provide baseline level of digital technology awareness and rapidly build more advanced digital competency and skills within every function at every level of the organization. In particular, when it comes to extracting business value from big data, our digital citizen model is focused on data science capability. Employees have received fundamental training on data science, so they are able to identify opportunities to leverage big data. We are developing practitioners across the enterprise who are skilled in data science techniques and executing data science projects. Advanced data science capabilities, such as application of machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence, is available to support projects within our technology centers of excellence. Here in our Nigeria business, we have realized great strides in building digital fluency. We have empowered our workforce to identify value-creating opportunities and provided them with the tools to leverage a range of digital technologies in order to collect, connect, extract, organize, visualize, and analyze data, including developing algorithms and models to optimize and predict and influence outcomes. Let me quickly share a few examples of recent locally developed data science solutions that leverage available data and are now delivering increased business value. Data science techniques were used to analyze historical pressure safety valve maintenance data and to develop an algorithm for predicting time to failure. The tool automatically refreshes with new maintenance information and generates updated calculations and reports. This solution has enabled our operations team to transition from a time-based to a risk-based inspection approach while maintaining regulatory requirements. Elimination of unnecessary inspections has resulted in significant cost avoidance and provided our maintenance personnel time to focus on other tasks. The quantity of stocked items we manage in our inventory is over 50,000. Our supply chain management team developed a data science solution to monitor these individual items based on historical usage, demand, and lead time in order to optimize controlled stock levels across different work groups. They have seen a 2% reduction in inventory while reducing the time to analyze stocking levels from hours to minutes. Every year, Chevron Nigeria Limited plans and executes their non-rig workover projects on different wells to sustain production and maintain integrity of the wells. Our asset and planning teams developed an algorithm that evaluates workover opportunities using multiple criteria and speeds generation of an optimum schedule of prioritized non-rig workover projects. The time to complete the prioritization and scheduling effort has been reduced from weeks to minutes, and we are expecting to see a 2 to 3% reduction in non-productive time over the course of an annual campaign. The final example I will describe is a data science solution driven by a team of our petroleum engineers that routinely pulls and prepares operational data from the field and automatically calibrates and optimizes integrated well and surface network models to provide operational settings that maximize production within field constraints. The solution drastically reduces the cycle time for petroleum engineers to identify and implement production optimization opportunities. To conclude, in order to thrive in this rapidly changing digital revolution and to successfully transform big data and digital technology, Chevron is enabling digital innovation and acceleration through its digital imperatives to implement next-generation IT systems, to shift paradigms regarding the value and accessibility of data, to build digital fluency and an agile mindset in its workforce, and to empower employees to make better, faster decisions supported by digital technology and a culture of innovation. Once again, on behalf of the Chairman and Managing Director for Chevron Nigeria Limited, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important event, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Kennedy. Can we please give him another round of applause? Director, Deepwater Asset and PSCs for Chevron Nigeria and Mid-Africa Business Unit, speaking on behalf of his Chairman and Managing Director. Very quickly now we go to the panel session, and I'd like to bring up our very first panelist. We heard a bit from him on Monday. I'd like to describe him as a man from Futo in Owerri to the world, invented and patented a robotic system using minimally invasive medical robots, something that the United States government has acquired assignee rights to since 2017. Please welcome the founder of Zevus, a global leading precision tech company and chairman of Farms Micro Group, Professor Ndubisi Ekekwe. Our next discussant certainly would bring to this discussion many years of experience serving as general manager at different departments and levels and shell companies, but currently he is the executive operations director for Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC with over 25 years of experience. Please welcome Engineer Effie Okon. Joining them is a seasoned information technology professional with over 15 years of experience, a woman passionate to bridge the digital divide between what is described or known as third world and first world countries, a second generation ICT expert. Please welcome Nkemdilim Uwajebego. On the panel as well is the General Manager District, Nigerian Ajib Oil Company, Alexandro Tiani, who is not here with us, but representing him is a man who I think is very appropriate for this role. He has held various positions in the company, and he's aligned to the company's digitalization efforts. Please welcome Vittorio Giuseppis. Yes, I got that. You're welcome, Vittorio. He's the manager for digitalization in NAOC here in Nigeria. Also with them on the panel is the engagement manager, digital consulting, Middle East and Africa for one of the leading tech companies in the oil and gas servicing space, Schlumberger. Please welcome Reese Carla Nicholas Ward. He's coming to our panel again with well over 25 years of experience. Now, to bring together all the discourse by way of moderation and steering the ship is Wale Famurewa, international anchor for CNBC Africa. Once again, remember that the audience interaction is via our in-web app, menti.com. That's the code for today. Please interact with them. Wale, the show is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here again today. And I think it's really a continuation of what we started yesterday. We were talking about big data yesterday. Today we're talking more about AI yesterday. And today we're speaking about big data. As we all know, they're all connected. So I'm delighted to moderate this again. And I think I'll allow Effiong to begin, because I know, Effiong, you have a couple of slides that you want to put up. I expect that our panelists will be bringing some rich and diverse perspective to this topic. So, Effiong, maybe you can kick off.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wale. So, good morning, all. I'd like to start on existing protocol as well, just like Rick, so saves us time. So, I think it's a privilege for us to be here this morning. I also want to say a big thank you for SPE to give us this opportunity to share. So, what I'll do is I'll just share a few slides to share some thoughts around, from a Seplat perspective, how we see AI, big data, and also mobile tech. Can I, next one, right? Oops. Okay. So this slide just try to paint a picture of how we see, if you look at the industry today, the role of big data in oil and gas. And sorry, panelists, I guess you probably don't end up having RSI, repetitive stress injury on your neck. We may have to look back a little bit. So what this picture just shows that, look, there's about $1.6 trillion of value to be unlocked using AI. So big data is real, is a huge opportunity over the next 10 years in the oil and gas industry. In the last World Economic Forum, there was a whole discussion around being able to unlock $1.6 trillion. Whether you work in exploration space, like I think Goke mentioned earlier on, if you look at how we look at seismic data in the past and how we're looking at seismic data now with lot of very high power processing tool available, you're able to go through those interpretation very, very quickly. And from Seplat perspective, imagine we bought assets from Shell in 2010, and today we're able to look at prospects with value over 1 billion barrels of reserves. It's unbelievable looking at the same data which has been acquired over the years, but with completely different lens and more powerful processing tool. That's with the respect to the exploration and appraisal space. In drilling very well, these days we go to well site to look at drilling data, you take log data and then someone has to interpret it, sent to the office. Now you can stream all the data from your wells live into the office and you can make decisions real time. Come to production as well, operation excellence, looking at valves, looking at vibration data from turbine compressors. We're able to build models using machine learning to predict performance, predict machine behavior and failures. That way you can reduce mean time to repair and also increase your mean time between failures, thereby driving very high uptime across the facilities. If you also go on to oil and gas transportation, Nigeria is very notorious for pipeline crude theft incident. There's a whole lot of technology now being deployed in terms of how do you detect leak system? How do you also intervene to keep those hydrocarbon within containment? Same with refining and also HSE, not to spend too much of your time. If I go on to the next slide, if I look at going through from smart drilling to looking at big chain. So in supply chain management today, we're looking at a lot of companies tend to struggle with what to order, when to order, and you see very large inventories in balance sheets. We have a huge inventory on a balance sheet as well. But with big chain now, you're able to go through your entire supply chain end to end and able to cut down so you can order materials only when you need. And that's really helpful in terms of how you manage your working capital. There's a whole debate around fossil fuel renewables. If you look at the whole revolution in shale, big data has been quite instrumental in terms of unlocking that potential. And now you see break-even prices for unconventional development coming really low across, especially in the US. And then the smart oil field technology we all talk about, how can you really drive efficiency, bring down costs as well, and also make all your projects a bit far more bankable to track investment with very high return. So lastly for us in Seplat, if you go to the next slide now, what we're trying to do in terms of now these are very old fields, so we're retrofitting all kinds of monitoring systems on Caterpillar engines so you can predict performance of those engines, predict failures, and look at RCM in terms of driving uptime across old machines. And then now we've also installed lots of sensors across the wellhead in the Delta, so you don't have people going out to the asset to acquire data, and you can do a lot of analysis real time to make decisions around optimizing oil production and also gas production. So if we look at gas, I mean, we've been very bullish around gas in Nigeria. Was probably the biggest domestic gas supplier in this country. As you sit in this hall today, Seplat accounts for 30% of the power that's generated in country. And all that is made possible by the new Oben plant. We just built the expansion of Oben plant and spend a lot of time on looking at data trends and doing analysis that helps us drive our uptime of that gas plant. So we could be in the top quartile availability range. So lots of work, I'll say. Even maintenance now is driven using big data. So we're moving away from time-based to condition-based maintenance. That way you also drive down costs significantly. So overall, I say there's a huge potential we see even as an independent company. The limitation sometimes around is more about mindset, is about leadership, is about I'll call generation where you look at the older generation, sometimes they do struggle with the whole concept of how do you have to hire a lot of data analysts, train data. So there's so much investment that needs to go through this disruptive phase of our industry for us to really maximize the value of big data. Thank you very much. This is just some insights.
No, great insight. Thank you so much, Effiong. And we'll be touching a lot of the themes that you've spoken about so far. Well, Nicholas, I think I'd like you to go next. Obviously, Schlumberger has been described as a digital company earlier today. So let's hear your perspective on this.
Thank you very much. What I would like to start with is simply talking about the challenges that are in our industry and that prevent digitalization to go right the first time in E&P organizations. If I start listing the challenges that we face, we'll be here still tomorrow morning, but I'd like just to make sure I list 4 different families of challenges in the coming couple of minutes. The first one is our data. Our data is scattered as an industry, is scattered in systems, in folders, in laptops, etc. Data ecosystems are not properly defined. We use less than 4% of our data to really create value. So that's the first challenge we face, and it's a systemic challenge. The second one is more related to our understanding of cloud and big data. There is a lot of confusion around cloud and big data, and there is a lot of resistance also encouraged by regulators against using cloud for various reasons that I'm not listing here. But this is one of the main challenges that are also impeding digitalization. The third one is one of my preferred. Only 3% of oil and gas companies have a chief data officer, which means that maybe less than 3% of oil and gas companies have a really formalized data ecosystem with governance and processes and you name it, that defines a data ecosystem. And the fourth and last one is around leadership. 70% of journeys in digitalization would fail because of lack of leadership, translated in either lack of change management, lack of vision, or lack of collaboration between the various silos and verticals. I think that would summarize it a little bit in an organized way. There are also circumstantial challenges that could be due to building capabilities, for instance, in some areas of this world or in some organizations where digital capabilities need to be built in order to ensure a journey is started properly and also is delivering results.
All right, thank you. Thank you. No doubt, very salient points as well, and we'll be focusing on challenges later on. But Professor Ndubisi, if you have the mic, so I'd like you to go now and just also reflect on this topic about transforming our business, especially with respect to creating value with big data. I mean, clearly you have some rich experience in that area. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I will
especially in the context of the oil and gas industry.
I will begin by saying that this is largely the construct of the old mathematics.
Old mathematics.
Mathematics, the science of numbers. And anytime you understand a process, you understand a system, you have a better chance to actually do that in better. So big data is basically giving us the capacity to have a better efficiency in the utilization of the factors of production in oil and gas. And when we do that, we can bring a better equilibrium between people, process, and tools. In the past, there were things we could not understand. But because of big data, we are now having the capacity through the data that is available to us to make sense of those things.
It's really expanding our knowledge of the business.
And when we do that, that means that we can do things in a very better way. So let's look, for instance, here. Let me go down to the downstream sector in Nigeria. We are still in the ecosystem where somebody loads a truck of gasoline from a depot in Lagos going to the northern part of Nigeria. He now siphons that to Togo or one of the neighboring countries in Nigeria. What largely the government does is to track the truck going to northern part of Nigeria, while the gasoline has already been sent to Togo. So the empty truck will actually get to Kaduna or Bauchi, but the gasoline is actually being used in Togo. Then this is a paralysis. It's a paralysis because they have not utilized a very critical tool that is not just running entities, but also transforming entities. Information technology is used to run companies, but big data is going to be used to transform companies. And until you can transform entities through efficiency in understanding what is happening in those entities, you cannot improve them. So imagine if we put IoT sensors, that those trucks can monitor the liquid content as they are moving from Lagos to Kaduna, that if the truck man removes the liquid content of that truck, somebody can see it in a monitor to say, I can see the truck going to Kaduna, but there is no liquid content in that truck. It means that something is wrong. You know, we can get everything right in the upstream sector, but until we can fix the paralysis in the downstream sector, the good people of Nigeria will not experience this big data in their lives. And that is where I want us to have a conversation, not necessarily in what is happening in the upstream, what is happening in the deep water, but also how we can use technology to fix market frictions, which are evident across all mechanisms of trade that we are expressing in this country. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So certainly we are also taking this conversation to the downstream sector. Well, Ken, before I come to you, I would really like Vittorio to comment on the point I think he has made, which is about expanding knowledge. Now, from your experience, you know, in your portfolio as the program manager for digitalization, you would probably understand this more than most of us in terms of the knowledge that you are able to acquire. And I think that will be a selling point for those who need to adopt big data and this whole concept of AI. Can you just speak to that point, the learning points for you?
So, first thing, I want to say that I think we are one of the maybe few companies that actually have chief operating for about digitalization.
Sorry, do you mind just speaking closer to the mic so that everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Dedicated to digitalization. And about knowledge, this is true. but I think the point of digitalization is transform all the enormous quantity of data that we have up to now in information. This means information for our people, information that can be shared, information that can be acquired, and then must be available to everyone within the industry. The point is that if anyone is able to access this kind of information, anyone is able to learn of this information. One of the points is that the huge quantity of data now somehow hide information for us. There's too many data for anyone to actually read all of them, understand all of them, and it's kind of thing. But
Just
now,
humanly impossible to do it without machines.
yes,
Or without
yes.
processing.
Now what the technology development give us is the ability to extract information to the huge amount of data, extract some structured information, something that can be understandable by us. From, for example, if we have a drilling operation going, actually we already received a huge amount of data from the drilling site. There is no need to go there to supervise all the activity. We receive them, but this is so huge that it's difficult to interpret them in a real-time manner, to be focused on time of what is happening. And this is why machine learning, artificial intelligence can really help us to make the difference, to acquire the value of this data.
Right.
For all to our people.
Right.
Go
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Another thing, you have speak about people, how we can teach people. I think also digitalization and the spread of this kind of information can enable the technology transfer between the senior expert and the new resources of our companies. Because this is definitely true. Give people information they are more than willing to learn. This is my experience. More than committed to acquire this information used for the best of our companies and also for them.
Great stuff. But if I can take this to other panelists, and before I come to you, Nkem, I really would like some of you to share more practical uses of big data, how it has expanded the knowledge base for the business and how that's been transformational. You know, maybe if you're from your experience as well, you can speak to how adopting AI and big data as a culture in the organization is just opening up your minds to some possibilities you didn't see before.
Okay, so if you look at oil and gas, I mean, we spend huge amount of money acquiring data, and the first issue was we acquire so much info, and over 80% of that info is rarely used. That's one good example. And I give you some like seismic. I did mention today that we're looking at our old seismic data. We have done through a lot of reprocessing, and we're seeing huge prospects in areas where no one ever imagined in the past. And what's changed is, I keep saying, it's not like the data itself has changed over the years. Seismic data is still seismic, whether you're looking at acoustic impedance or direct hydrocarbon or whatever seismic attributes, or it's pressure data from, say, well testing, or from, basic pressure testing from drilling wells, or is it operational excellence data, temperature, machine vibration. But because now there's so much powerful processors available, you're able to process the data in a very short time frame and then get insights, because insights is from the information is what then drives the decision you're making. So we're more now in a data decision-driven world. So opening our minds, for me, has been a real big change for us. Bringing in data analysts who are really trained to work side by side with petroleum engineers, because that's also a new skills that's required. The traditional petroleum engineering skills doesn't really work in this space. But with data analysts who do the machine learning, you're then able to bring insights to PEs, to directors, to CEOs, who then make the business decisions. I think for us, that's been a real big change we see. Having data analyzed and getting the insights, which enables the business decision executives to make the right decision. That's what has changed from my own perspective.
Oh, awesome, and that's very useful insight as well. You wanted to chime in? I'll come to you in a bit, but I really would like Nkem to contribute, because I mean she's the only lady on the panel and she hasn't spoken. I feel it's unfair already. Anyway, so I would like you to chime in generally on all that has been said so far, but specifically I would like you to speak to some of the points that Rick made earlier when he was making his presentation. about the challenge of adoption. Complex legacy IT systems, I think, is a real challenge that I'm sure many companies will face. And of course, he talked about organizational fluency. Actually, I'm not sure it was Rick. I think it was it was the gentleman from SNEPCO. But the bottom line is that these are real issues, and I wanted you to speak to the challenge of adoption given this type of real problems in organizations.
Okay, thank you very much. So we do a lot of digital transformation journeys with companies, not in the oil and gas space, but the trends are exactly the same, right? So the challenges that he mentioned in terms of people, in terms of change management, in terms of leadership, in terms of interoperability not being there because the systems are, you know, standalone systems that don't talk to each other, right? And also you having legacy systems that maybe can't even go on the cloud, which means that you have to heavily invest in your infrastructure in terms of getting additional, you know, cloud infrastructure, getting new systems and things like that. I think that for me, the key thing is to start from the top, right? You must make sure that at board level, you understand what digital transformation really is, right? Because if you do not understand it at that strategic level, it is going to be very, very hard for it to actually trickle down. Because change management is a massive thing. IT projects don't fail because the systems are bad. They fail because people make them fail, right? People is the biggest challenge that you will face in any digital transformation journey, simply because we don't like to change. We like things the way that they've always been done. We like to, you know, do things. And what I've realized is that if at board level and executive level, you don't have enough knowledge to actually say, okay, this is the strategy that we're pursuing and we're actually going to figure out all the elements of it, right? So the systems element, the change management element, and then also how do you build capacity, right? So he talked about you don't need traditional petroleum engineers anymore. You need data scientists and data analysts. And all other industries need data analysts and data scientists as well. Where's this capacity coming from? Who's building this capacity, right? So some of the banks have created their own training center for data analysts and data scientists. I don't know what is happening in the oil and gas sector. But these are things that as, you know, captains of industries and stakeholders, you also need to make sure that these conversations bubble up when it comes to policy making, when it comes to shaping our educational curriculum. Because if we don't actually address the problem from where, you know, where it actually stems, then we're not going to make any real progress. Because at the end of the day, you and your organization, yes, you can train data analysts, but wouldn't it be easier if there were universities that were already churning out the right kind of people trained in the right kind of way, right? In terms of executive education, there are digital transformation courses that, you know, are available and that are really, really key. And then also I think sometimes it helps to make sure, you know, like he said, chief data analyst, chief technical officer, chief information officer. These are positions that you need to start looking at. Or chief digital transformation officer, right? That is what a lot of companies are moving towards. So I think it's really a mindset shift and figuring out how do you change your entire thinking on this journey, right? The systems will sort themselves out as long as you have some money to put behind it, right? But I think that the critical thing is capacity and also mindset and strategy from above.
Professor Dubisi, I want you to chime in now. And before I come back to him, I want to remind everyone that you can share your questions and I'll be taking them right here. So again, they've put up the platform for you to share your questions. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to do that. Now, Prof, I want to get your thoughts on a point that she has hit on here, which is trying to bring that culture change by educating people. And that argument was made yesterday as well, that we need to take this move to our universities and colleges and so forth. But one, I'm trying to be practical here. Can we actually do that practically, given the changes that are needed in the industries right now? And linked to that is, what's the middle ground? Is this learning something that people can quickly acquire? Or must you outsource the skills, like she mentioned, data analysts and so forth? I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the most important thing here is to have this understanding that it is not really the technology that is going to be supreme. It has to be the friction in the business that you want to fix. Companies exist to fix frictions between demand and supply. A Shell exists because there is imperfection in the marketplace where Shell believes it has a capacity out of accumulated knowledge to fix that friction through exploration and mining of crude oil. Big data technology, they are all enablers in accomplishing that fixing of that friction. So if you want to begin making the technology to be the business of the company, you're going to have a problem. So at the end of the day, it's still that strategic objective. What is it that this company wants to accomplish? And if that company has a very clear vision, what it wants to do, it is now, how can we accomplish that? That is the time you can understand the role big data will play. That is how you can understand how artificial intelligence can help you in order to execute that friction that you want to accomplish. So I'll give you an example. In agriculture, where I own a company, just it's a digression. African farmers do not go to farm to make money. They go to farm because that is a way of living. That is a cultural norm they have inherited from their forefathers. So a farmer has gone to farm, he is still poor. The next year he will continue doing the same thing even though he's still poor. Now, how can a man who is a farmer asking government to send food to him? Because he doesn't see farming as a mechanism for him to lift his standard of living. Rather, it's a cultural way of living. So if you are just deploying big data because you want to deploy technology, you're going to have problems. So that is the mindset shift, and the educational element of it is that people must still try to understand the strategic goal they want to solve. Technology can only help you to get to that destination. But if you cannot understand that problem, that friction, even big data will not be a solution to you.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm the only one that thinks this way, but I think organizations have a good sense of what their strategic objectives are. So, in my mind, what we're trying to locate here is how technology can help enhance that. So, I hear your argument about understanding the strategic objective, but in my mind, I think it's not as that difficult.
Let me explain it this way. Let's say, for instance, you have a laptop, and what you use that laptop is only to send email. And you go to your boss to say, sir, I need a laptop for $4,000. If I'm the one approving it, I say, why would I buy a laptop for $4,000 for you to send email when there is one for $500? It's still a laptop. But now you are not utilizing efficiently the factor of production by buying a laptop for $4,000 for somebody to be sending email. When there is a laptop of $500 that can also be efficiently used by that person to be sending email. My point is this: you can go and take all the money you have to acquire new technology when that may not necessarily be appropriate for the specific friction that you want to solve. You can't go and buy a 4,000 laptop for somebody to be used for sending email when a 500 laptop is available. So it's not really a technology problem. It's understanding what the purpose you are actually trying to solve. That is a very critical thing, so that you don't overinvest and you don't underinvest, because capital income ratio, cost to income ratio, is a very, very critical element, and that's the point I'm trying to make here.
You wanted to make a point, okay?
Yeah, so
I would like to hear from you on this point I am making. I'm not still sure we are on the same page. But
no, I think you guys are actually on the same page. So the strategic vision of a company is always very clear, right? If not, the company wouldn't be as big. And I mean, in oil and gas, I think most of the players are very focused and know what they want to achieve. I think what he's talking about is more aligning those strategic business goals to technology, right? And understanding how technology can actually help achieve those strategic goals. And what we've seen a lot, and this is across different industries that I've worked in, is that a lot of the time, those two are not aligned, right? Like he said, you'll be like, oh, this company bought this system. We need the system as well. You've not done an analysis of why you need the system. You've not actually said, oh, but their business goal is X and my business goal is Y, so do I really need this system? Can this system achieve Y, right? And that big disconnect is exactly what he's talking about, where you spend a lot of money and then you don't see actual results. And this is something that, as I said, not only in your industry, in a lot of industries, and it comes from executives and boards not understanding that digital transformation journey and the things that they should actually be looking at.
But if I bring you back to the question that prompted this, I think that's the whole point. How do we help them understand the whole value of digitization? You know, that's. But Effiong, if you can just, there's another microphone there. You can use that too.
I think it's a journey and it's going to take some time. There are no shortcuts. I hear you say help to understand, and I do agree with you that it will take some time. But the honest truth is, if I look at the survey that was carried in 2016 by IFS, Industrial and Financial Systems, so 88% of companies surveyed said that they were going through digital transformation efforts, but only 25% of them actually understood what digital transformation is about. So like every new thing, you know, there's a whole lot of talk today, lot of talk, but to be honest, the understanding is very limited. But what we have done, coming back to the point I just made, is our business strategy has got a digital transformation strategy in there. Business is about value, right? For us, we go to the market, we raise capital, we make commitment to return value to all our stakeholders and shareholders. So our perspectives, AI is around how do you now leverage on this to even maximize value. Whether I like it or not, I mean, if you look at Africa, over 600 million people still don't have access to electricity, right? So there's a bit about purpose, why do we do business? There's a bit around, you know, whether it's the SDGs or whether it's lifting people out of poverty. At the end of the day, for us, the way we see this is, you know, this is a great opportunity for us to actually reduce cycle time in decision making by looking at data and also delivering far more value to all stakeholders. But I do agree there's a huge change around culture, you know, in the industry for oil and gas. We're very silo sort of mental is quite silo. You have the geologists who work in a silo. You have the petroleum engineers. You have the, you know, the surface engineers. But this is giving us a great opportunity to try and bring all these disciplines together with one common purpose, reducing cycle time. But some key changes I see we need to also look at, because the oil industry is very much inward looking. We've got to be more outward looking, and we have to learn from other industries. If you look at what companies like Google or Amazon are doing around driverless technology, robotics, I think we're becoming more open-minded now to look at what we can learn from what's happening outside. And I'll give you a very good example. Ultrasound. You all know ultrasound technology, which has been there for ages. You know, when my wife got pregnant, those of you who are married, you go do ultrasound, right? To see whether the baby is moving or not. With just sound technology, you're able to detect problems in your wells, like leaks or pipelines. So that's why I did mention that it's the same sort of data in the past, but applying it differently with very high microprocessing speed, you can make insights much quicker. So big game change for us around culture is be open-minded, look outside, work with academia, work with service companies like Schlumberger and G and the rest, and also have a business lens to it. Because for us, if it doesn't bring value to the bottom line, AI isn't going to work. And that's why some CEOs are probably a bit reluctant in how quick they want to get on board. Because if it doesn't help them deliver their business objective, it's not going to come on board. Right. I think those are my own perspective.
I hear you. I am still coming back to this point, because if you remember, the question really was, how can we bring that learning to CEOs and everyone else in the organization? Because we've agreed, and I think your survey supports the point. You mentioned 25% of, I think, CEOs, don't know how. So that is where I'm going with this. How do we help them know how? That is the question. So yeah, maybe you can go.
Just a perspective. The point is that digitalization is a journey. I love this idea, and the journey that we cannot make alone. That's the point. All the company, all the employees need to be together, with us on the same boat to sail this new sea. That's the point, I think. Because in my experience, the point to make digitalization successful is not to build a complex environment, but make it the simplest as possible. Because people in our organization can be more or less technologically oriented, but the point is, if you take time to give the idea of what can be the benefits, everyone are more than willingly to accept the change. Because digitalization is a change that is happening now because it is fastering, but it's happened also decades ago. All of us have a smartphone in our pocket and have access to new kind of information that 20 years ago was impossible. Everyone knows it, and everyone are more than willing to not remain behind the line of the progress. This is what I have learned in my experience. Everyone are willing. The point is, maybe there can be some fear to remain behind. But the idea of a digitalization program is to involve everyone. Also because if we go to help, we have to go to help to digitalize the environment where people work. We are like a servant leader, give seeds of the idea that other people can give to us. That's the point.
Right.
The point is, we develop little steps all together, and then all the organization will be digitalized. That's the point. It's not from the head. We need vision, but we need to involve all the base of our organization.
Right. Nicholas, I want to hear from you on this point as well. If you can bring the microphone this way. Thank you.
Thank you. So the case for going on the big data and the cloud has been made over the past decade or so. Efficiency is the key word. When you use big data and you go on a cloud system, the first thing you're doing is you're reducing your infrastructure cost. That's the first thing. I mean, that there is no debate about it. The case for that has been made. The second most important benefit and value you will have is you will have one reference, one snapshot at any point in time of your data ecosystem that is the actual reference, instead of having multiple versions of your data disseminated in various parts of your
There's a value in that, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when people access that data lake, for instance, they will know that they are accessing the latest version of your data, and this is the true version. Now, once you realize these two values, the third layer of values that you are able to achieve is building all the tools, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., all the tools on top that will allow you to really lock down the data and ensure that you're using it to create value and to make decisions and to be able to correct, for instance, whatever you need to correct in terms of seismic data, or making sure that you are stopping production in one area and starting it in another, and all the operation kind of decisions that you need to make in order to optimize the utilization of your hydrocarbon resources.
Okay. All right. You wanted to respond as well?
Yeah, I just want
to... Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
I just want to point out, as you were trying to ask here, it's really about how do you improve productivity, efficiency in an organization, just like Nicolas stated. Everyone understands that technology improves productivity. So convincing the CEO is essentially to prove and make a case what is going to be the reduction in downtime if we deploy this technology over the next few.
And really, that is what the CEO wants to hear, right?
Yeah.
If you can show him practically what is the value, then he's more likely to adopt.
You can take a pilot and say, okay, let's try it in this flow station, or let's try it in this oil rig, and let's monitor it over 6 or 1 year and see how it compares with what we have in other installations or other operations. Right. And when you look at that, if there is a quantifiable improvement against the benchmark, you can now see clearly that this thing is working. You know, it is not just pursuing technology because you want to advance technology. It has to be that that technology is actually advancing the mission of the business. That is the point I'm trying to make. I'm a technology guy. I build microprocessors. I have high patents. But the point is, I am not driven by the technology. I'm rather driven by the business, which the technology could help to improve. So that you don't just go and be throwing money on technology. At the end of the day, that technology is not helping that business mission. That's the point I was trying to point out.
Got it. All right, let me take a question from the audience. And again, I want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, please use the platform. I believe this is for you, Effiong. It says, you mentioned blockchain as being critical. Have you started using it? And in what aspect of your operations do you use blockchain? To what extent can you speak to that?
So we started looking at supply chain. If you look at every company, you spend most of your money through supply chain, right? Contracting, procurement. If you take out salaries and maybe some basic costs, 80% of company spend goes to supply chain. And it's especially in Nigeria, you know, the whole supply chain process is very complex, you know, from the contracting process to procurement to working with OEMs globally. So that is one area we started looking at blockchain. Now we brought in a blockchain. We brought in quite a number of experts to help us look at end-to-end. How do you now take out, there's so much waste and inefficiency in there. So it's a really big, and we see huge game-changing potential in terms of the supply chain. And I did mention, if you look at most companies, those of you look at profit and loss or balance sheet, go look at the inventory. A lot of companies have very, very large inventory in their warehouses all over the place. And the problem with inventory is all these materials you buy, at some point they become obsolete, right? You then have to deal with obsolescence. Huge waste of money. So that is where we're focusing now to try and take out that waste from our company with using a big chain.
Great stuff. Victoria, I think you should answer this one. This one is asking how, they would like to know how you invest in the future of younger employees such that they can hold the bull by the horn when they take over. Now, this person is referring to this whole culture change. So trying to take it to the next generation of leaders, you know, what practically are you doing at NAOC?
So for young employee are basically the ones that are for sure more technological oriented.
So Victoria, I need you to speak into the microphone, please, if you can. Thank you.
The young employee are the ones that are basically the most technologically oriented. So about digitalization, I think they are the one that can gain more benefits. They have already the ideas and the vision of what digitalization can be. This is my experience. What company can do is to empower them, collect the idea, and also give them chances to grow up and to share from every part of the country. For example, in ENI, there is a program called Hackathon that is the idea of collect young resources, from 100, 200 young resources for all our different business units all together, and then make tables of from different cultures, different ideas as well, and they can develop one or two ideas. They can be selected and then can be put in practice. This table become the seeds of our new ideas and how our development proceeds. And I think it's one of the best way we can collect ideas around the company.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I have another question here, and maybe you can try this one, Kem. For small businesses in the oil and gas industry, what are the small steps that can be taken to bring in digitalization? So this person wants to know some real practical stuff. And I'm drawn to the point about small businesses because quite often there's a sense that this whole concept of digitalization is for the big companies to bring in more efficiency, but for the growing companies, can you just share your perspective?
So I actually think that regardless of what level you're at, you definitely need to start looking at how do you start going on this digital transformation journey. And I think some practical steps would be to, identify what problems you have. So I completely agree with Dr. Ndubisi in terms of if you don't know what problem you want to solve, don't bring in technology, right? So I think the first thing is, what are the things that you're struggling with, right? Where are you losing the most money, for example, right? Is it in your supply chain? Then maybe figure out how do you bring in, your supply chain technology? Is it in the assets that you have? Is it in, the transportation issues that he spoke, where your petroleum goes missing, right? What are those things that you are struggling with, where you actually lose on your bottom line? That's where I would start, and then figure out what are the technologies, and do a lot of research in terms of, okay, what are best practices in the industry? Are there solutions that are, maybe not by one of the big OEMs, but a smaller technology provider that can actually give you the same results because you're doing it at a smaller scale as well, right? And then also looking at, if you say, okay, you want to do big data and you want to go cloud, there are packages for small businesses specifically, so it's not only available to big businesses. So I think it's really about figuring out what is it that you want and having the right person to actually drive this technology journey.
No,
So
I think the first part of your response, I think, is very clear. People can locate their problems. I think the second bit is the issue, trying to find the solutions. Where do they go? Because very often they don't have the skills. So take the transportation analogy that was provided. Yes, that could be a real problem for a business. But the question is, who does he talk to? Where does he find the solution? So maybe someone else can also share your thoughts on how I can practically find help, digital help, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's also a redesign that if we can have it maybe in the oil and gas sector. The typical construct here is the big companies that must be players here. But if you look at what is happening in the banking sector, where they now have fintechs. Fintechs are financial technology companies, very small companies, and so many of them are doing amazingly well in this country. In the oil and gas, can we have something like Petritech, just like amalgam of small companies that can become feeders to actually have the opportunity to solve some of the big problems, giving the SME startups opportunity to work in oil and gas. You don't have to be a multi-million-dollar balance sheet company before you can participate. So let's say, for instance, we go to Eket, we go to Warri, and we have clusters of startups where Nigerian young people are actually giving small digital transformation, digital opportunity jobs in Shell, in ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and say, go and help us fix this problem. We don't need to import those technologies from America or Europe before they can be used in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. If you offer that opportunity, you are going to see Nigerians living around the world who can come in because there is now a market opportunity they can come to participate. We do not have the accumulated capabilities locally, but there are people that have those capabilities that are Nigerian that are living around the world. For instance, I own Zemvos. We work with companies to help them digitize, just like this one I mentioned. It's actually one of our products, Smart Tank. So if I know that in Warri, the oil industry is looking for a local company, a local startup that can help them build a sensor that can enable to improve something. I live in America. I will hire people here in Nigeria. I will transfer my capability to them, and then we can fix that problem. The reason why we are not seeing is because no one is asking these companies to seed that young, overlying ecosystem that can actually grow tomorrow. The banks have shown up something amazing, that besides the banking sector, there could be a fintech. In the oil and gas, can we have the equivalent of fintech that can serve the oil and gas sector? That is the SME I believe we need in this industry, and also the typical.
I think that's an excellent point. Very excellent point. And as you spoke, I was thinking about the banking industry. What made fintechs evolve so easily to provide solutions for financial services? You want to provide an answer to that?
Yeah, so I think that banking is actually not responsible for fintech. I think fintech came because banking wasn't solving problems, right? So it's more about, and this is why a lot of banks are now trying to align with the fintechs, because they know that if we don't, we're dead, right? And I think that that's a very vital point. If you want, and what the banks are doing now is that they're actually building innovation hubs where they can incubate startups that are working, and they basically allow them to operate with their licenses so that startups have lower, cost of entry into a market. And I think that's actually what can be done in the oil and gas
So
industry.
incubation hubs for the oil and gas industry.
Exactly, where you basically focus on innovation that is specifically for the oil and gas industry, and doing hackathons, like he mentioned as well, right? Where you say,
so that is already happening.
Yeah, so you say, this is the problem we want to solve. But I mean, I see these things happening with big organizations, but you were addressing the SMEs, so how do they do it?
Yeah.
As a small company, do you really, like if Shell says, hey, we're doing a hackathon, I know half the tech industry will show up. But if, I don't know, in Chem Oil and Gas says we're doing a hackathon, they'll be like, who's that, right? So I think that there's, for small companies, there's that level of, also barrier of actually accessing technology and being able to find.
So it's just a real problem.
Yeah,
they
and
have
I
to
think
deal
this
with.
is across different industries, because the majority of kind of enterprise technology providers are providing it for enterprise businesses and not for SMEs. But that being said, I think that there are still opportunities to partner with smaller technology businesses and actually get them to understand these are the problems that we're facing. This is how you can solve them. But I think you just need to build those partnerships over time and actually reach out into the technology industry. Because what I see happening is that in the technology industry, if we don't really know about a sector, we're not going to build solutions for it.
Sure.
Right? The majority of solutions that we're going to build are retail solutions that impact customers, right? In the oil and gas industry, I mean, apart from me going to the filling station and buying petrol,
It's more of a B2B
right?
thing.
It's more of a B2B thing. And for example, now there's an app where you can actually order fuel and then they deliver it to you, right? So that is consumer marketing solved, right? But those B2B problems, so I think also organizing conferences and places where you invite the technology companies and founders to actually say, hey, these are the issues that we're dealing with,
Right.
help us solve them.
So we need to bring that interaction.
Yes, collaborate.
And hopefully we can get more solutions. All right, I have another question which I think is quite relevant here. In the journey of transitioning the industry towards digitalization, what are the policies and systems in place towards ensuring cybersecurity? Data in the wrong hands can cause a lot of damage. I think this is a real issue here, because clearly data can be an asset, but it can be a huge liability in the wrong hands. So on cybersecurity, any perspective?
So the methodology to getting to the solution stage are the same. I'm going from the previous question to this one. Are the same regardless of the size of the organization. So if you want to get to a solution, you have to adopt and respect a certain phased approach. The first one is you need to go with your vision. You need to know what's your strategy. You need to know what are your priorities, and then and only then you can go and seek a solution. And that solution will be a mix of technologies, defining a digital ecosystem, but it will also be a mix of processes, defining policies, re-engineering workflows, and building your digital capabilities, having a change management framework, and so on and so forth. But back to the policies and procedures, they need to be owned by the right entities, obviously. Introducing digital into a large or a small organizations will enable a shift in the internal power equation. And that in itself is also a form of transformation that is not digital. It's organizational, and it needs to be acquired as well. Don't assume that once you have initiated or embarked on a digital transformation journey, that you will use the existing status quo and move forward with it. Your organization, as an organization and as a business, will go transforming as you go as well. Right? The last one is you will need external help, regardless of your size. You will need even more so external help if you are a small business. And it's a fact. You don't treat yourself by yourself. You go see a doctor right? So it's the same analogy. You need professional help when you want to go on a long journey of transformation. You cannot do it internally.
Thank you. Very good point. All right. So I have a question here, which I'll love the any panelists to speak to, but I want to start with you, Effiong, because I think it may apply to you. Do you see AI phasing out petroleum engineers in the near future?
No, it's like saying mechanics are not going to be in business again, right? In spite of all these onboard computer systems in cars, right?
So some may argue Kodak is no longer in business, but it was a huge business.
No, I think you still need petroleum
3 decades
engineers.
ago.
In fact, you need even very good, well-grounded petroleum engineers, because the point around engineering is the basics. You still got to get the basics right. Whether I know this, I look at my kid and how they play with apps and all that, and it's a completely different world when we're in school and we write Fortran programming and to C++ and Visual Basic. The fundamentals of petroleum engineering, oil and gas will never go away. And you can only make good decisions, conclusions, insights if you understand the basics. And that's why I'll say PE is there for life. It's not going to go away. Both the mindset, thoughtful leadership, the way of working, the behavior, and the collaborative space is going to change big time. Because one issue around big data is, in the oil and gas industry, data is normally held at functional level, right? The geologists have their own data, right? Whether it's seismic or whatever. The petrophysicists, same thing. They got log data somewhere. The PT, then you have the surface guy who work with, process pi data, and it's all silos. But what's saying in this new world is you got to have platform that allows seamless integration across all the silos, and that's where value then comes in. Same with banking. I think I've been very impressed with how banking industries is transforming in Nigeria. These days you can sit on your desktop and do bank transfer. People really don't understand what must have gone behind it. So for me, guys, for younger generation who are still reading petroleum engineering, don't worry, there's a whole lot of future in there. Apart from AI, I know there's concern around electric vehicles and renewables and all that. This business still needs very good petroleum engineers.
Okay, so that is a petroleum engineer speaking. So let us hear from someone else. Prof, I know you're not a petroleum engineer.
Yeah.
So do you agree?
I would say not necessarily. The reason is this.
That sounds diplomatic, but
AI
okay.
is expected to be as impactful as invention of fire. It is going to redesign the architecture of the global economy. There will be opportunities that will be created, and there are also going to be dislocations in markets across territories, across industrial sectors. Don't just think that because you're a petroleum engineer that you are going to be immune from this dislocation. We may not have petroleum engineer as a job. Somebody will do, but we may have AI focusing on petroleum. In other words, you are not competing with another human being, but you are going to be competing with machines. So this is important. If you go to Abuja, walk from Central Bank of Nigeria office through that cadastral zone to the end of the old Union Bank, do you know that all the bank's branches there have been closed, except about 2 remaining? What is the implication? They have been replaced with ATMs. The jobs have been lost. People have lost their jobs there. Count the total number of people working in the Nigerian banking sector. They are increasing their profit, they are increasing their revenue, but the number of people are actually dropping. So I expect that to happen in the petroleum sector, because petroleum industry is still at the infancy level of AI and big data, while the consumer sector like banking have actually advanced faster than them. I expect by the next 5-6 years, that is actually the time they evolve after the infancy level they are. And that is when you know that you are not competing with a fellow petroleum engineer, you're going to be competing with machines. And finally, if it used to be a job that 100 people used to do for analytics or analysis in seismic, you could ask a machine to do it with 3 people. And that means how many people are going to lose their job? 90-something people. So there will be, but finally, finally, this is a caveat. Man is bounded by the limitation of the knowledge you have today. There is a possibility, as Mr. Ekon said, that AI can also open a new dimension no one has ever talked today. That instead of you thinking of losing 97 jobs, 1,000 jobs will be created by AI. That is the promise of the future. And
So
that's why I'm optimistic.
So I'm sure you would agree that it was good we heard from someone else, not just the, I think, geologist or engineer. But Nkem, you want to say something? I know you also want to say something. You can make it very brief.
Yeah, so I mean, I quite align with what he said, but I think that jobs will not disappear. They're just going to evolve and change. And if you look at all the previous industrial revolutions, it was exactly the same thing. So the same thing is going to happen in this fourth industrial revolutions, where the jobs evolve, right? And you will not be doing what a petroleum engineer is doing today, but you will be doing something else. So I think it's really important to keep learning and keep, looking at, okay, what are the trends? What's happening in AI? Why can't I work in a company that services a petroleum company as a petroleum engineer, but in AI, right? Because somebody still has to write those programs. Somebody still needs that industry knowledge. Somebody still needs to feed that. So the knowledge that you have, is going to become more and more important in a knowledge economy, but it will not be the same traditional industry. I just wanted to go back to that cybersecurity question that we didn't answer. And just say, in terms of like policies and laws, I think the legal system in Nigeria is still very, very far behind. And I think that industries, as big as the oil and gas industry, actually need to put pressure on government to actually look into these different laws and policies, because if they don't change, it means that there's going to be a lot of risk associated, right? And once you have risk...
And you could even argue sort of sovereign risk as well for the country, right?
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I think, I think data is, the new oil, right? Even for the oil and gas industry. And I think that we need to figure out, how do we protect that data properly, right? And how do we make sure that not just as companies we've put in the right protection, but also the legal framework is there to actually back us if something happens. Right?
Got it. Nicholas?
Yes. Okay, so I need to allow myself to disagree with what was just said, and I will document my answer. We need to keep two factors in the backdrop. The first is that the humans and the machines are not in competition. Because if we are, guys, we lost already. So we are not competing with the machines. We are using the machines to do more with less resources. We're using machines to do the repetitive work that we don't want to be doing, so that we can focus on things that are more enriching, and so on and so forth. And that is the trend. By 2060, there will be $1,000 laptops that will have the same computing power as the human brain. That's 200 million connections a second. So we would be using that power, obviously, to our benefit. It's not us competing with the machines. It's really us using the machines to do more. So that's one. Two, I've been reading an article a week ago, maybe. Elon Musk wants to put a chip in the human brain to augment our brain capacity. Now, this looks today like science fiction, but not so much, because tests are going to be conducted, and so this is where humanity is evolving.